Sayde Scarlett is an author, a poet, and an actor, and she's joining us on Big Blend Radio today to talk about her debut novel. It's called Clouds and Earth, and it's the first installment in the Peace Outside trilogy. It's dark and thrilling, and as soon as you turn the page, you're in it, man. And to me, it should already be like a movie or a TV series because it's got a lot of action. It's got strong women. We like that. But everybody, if you're into sci-fi, contemporary fiction, definitely for you. So I encourage you to go to her website. Of course, you can get it on Amazon, all those great places. Go to her website, though, Sayde-Scarlett.com, and that's Sayde, Sayde-Scarlett.com. So welcome, Sayde. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Hey, we're very excited. So are you in London or in Dubai today?
I'm in Dubai right now.
Oh, wonderful. So what is it like out there? You were born there, right?
I was born here, yep, and I still have family here. It's pretty great, and what they're doing here is, one of the most dynamic cities in the world. So it's an exciting place and an exciting time.
Right. So now, do you live there now, or do you go back and forth to London?
I work in Dubai most of the time, but I do go back and forth to London a lot.
You've done a lot in London. This is interesting. So you published a collection of poetry called Love Crimes, and then you go into sci-fi, and here's this future war, the Long War. How did you go from Love Crimes to this?
Well, the story behind the poetry is I've just been writing poetry for ages, for years, since I was like a teenager. Since I was about 14 years old, I really got into writing poetry. And I just thought it would just be such a shame for me to not, for no one to see this and for me to not publish it. So I put it together and, just got it out there because I just thought it would be a shame to throw it all away? I don't know. Just got to do something with it. So that's what I did.
Awesome. Because I think it kind of adds to your writing when you put Clouds and Earth. To me, it's always important that the first chapter gets you in and gets you hooked. But you've got an incredible sense of place. You write in the action, you get the characters immediately, and you understand the surroundings. So do you think the poetry helps you with that?
I think that poetry helps you be dramatic. And sometimes people forget that novels, need to contain drama and conflict. And, people think that, books are boring and slow. And no, they've got to be dramatic and completely full of drama. So I actually do think the poetry makes you more well-rounded as a writer. So, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, because there's drama. It's riveting, I'd say. That's what your book, that's the word, riveting. Reading
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And, Clouds and Earth, everyone, it's out again. But so the Peace Outside, tell us about this because this is the first installment.
Yeah. So my idea for the trilogy was sort of an epic, sort of tragic but action-packed sci-fi, and it follows sort of the life of a soldier who has, now there's peace. She can't find a place for herself in the world because she's been so used to being at war. It's consumed her entire life. And now that there's peace, she has no idea what to do with herself. And she, can't accept that there's no, she has to build a whole new life. And she just can't accept that. So this is, that is the starting point of the Peace Outside trilogy.
So she's bored.
She's bored, but it's more than that.
Yeah, she's strong-willed, and there's that part of her too that's got a bit of loneliness, right? So she's very independent too.
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize that it can be really lonely work, and that when you come back to the ordinary world, other people don't understand what you've gone through, what you've seen, and I felt that it was really important to emphasize that, and just to show that there was a barrier between being a soldier and being a civilian.
What about like a sense of purpose? Like you go to war for a reason, and then the war's over. do. You have to find a new sense of purpose.
Absolutely. And, because she has, had a singular goal for years, that just sort of, when you think about life, I mean, I have, a handful of goals I want to do in my life and a handful of things. I'm not consumed by one overwhelming thing. And if you have that, it can be very, very difficult to sort of let that go. And I read a lot about sort of sports people who had got injured, and then they're like, well, I've been training for this since I was a small child, and now I can't do it. So I just have to accept, and it's tough for them, and that's sort of one of the things I thought about when I was creating this character.
That's interesting to me. I mean, I love that you have a woman too. That's also really important.
Yeah, and when I was researching for this novel, I found that women are much more likely to have PTSD than men. And even though the sort of stereotype that we always think of is a male soldier, I thought it was interesting to explore what if that was a woman, because they're actually much more likely to suffer from PTSD and be more sensitive to it.
That's true. I mean, we've been through things in life, and then all of a sudden it sneaks up at you. It can happen after the fact, after a while after the fact. You know?
Absolutely.
So that's interesting to put in there,
Maybe
too.
you can get it from having a baby.
Yeah,
I heard that. I heard that even people who witness having a baby can have PTSD.
Wow.
I even read about an astonishing article about witnesses. Yeah, things get rough.
Wow, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so there's one thing. I want to talk about these chips under the skin thing. This freaks me out, and I feel like, because we're doing it to dogs now, that the humans are next. I feel like it's going to happen, that we're going to have things under our skin.
Yeah, I kind of saw, I know that there's going to be a lot more emphasis on sort of biometric data, and I kind of see the natural progression as sort of having identity chips, under the skin, just like we do with animals. But, I'm not making a statement on whether that's good or bad, but I just thought it would be interesting, and I put it in the novel because I thought it might be interesting to explore what that means.
I read something about that the other day, where parents are thinking of having the chips put in their children so that if they get lost or kidnapped, they'd be able to find them. So it's really not that far out.
And I know, and it's kind of, freaky because what's the probability of being kidnapped, a child being kidnapped? It's actually very low. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's an interesting topic to discuss whether it's even an appropriate reaction. And just because we have this technology, should we use it? Not necessarily. Considering the probability of a child actually being kidnapped, then no, it's tiny. It's so low. So that makes you think.
It's interesting because they label your book as sci-fi, and I feel like it's really more about progression. Because look at the technology we have. Look at what 3D printers are doing. They can make a veggie burger. So it's kind of interesting when you look at it that way. That I don't know if sci-fi is part of reality. I think in a way.
Yeah, and I've been tending to call it speculative fiction rather than sci-fi because people have told me, look, this isn't a typical sci-fi. There are no spaceships. It doesn't fit into, it's recognizable as our world. But, nothing that I mention in the book is stuff that we don't actually already have. We have all of this just in the early stages. So I've just taken it and, this stuff which is in its sort of prototype stages now that they're talking about in the news, I'll just put that in as if that is a part of daily life. And, that's the way I saw the world progressing.
A lot of people think the world is getting worse than what it was. What do you think?
Well, this is what's extraordinary, is that if you ask people, people are generally pessimistic. They're like, oh, the world, it's going to the dogs, everything's getting worse, and there are no statistics and, no sort of hard facts or empirical evidence that say, yes, our world is worse than it was. It isn't. We live much better quality lifestyles. We have medicine and technology that, an ordinary person has the technology and the lifestyle that a king would not be able to get, years ago. And that's what I think is missing. And I feel like that sense of perspective, is very skewed towards this pessimism. And there's very little empirical evidence that the world is getting worse.
I think it's that humans are still, there's the good and the evil is still, part of.
Always going to be.
It's human beings are still being human beings. We've progressed with technology, with industrialization. Some of it on the negative side. So that's our lessons to learn with. How do we have all these balances? But at the same time, look at human beings we have gluttony in the form of we eat too much. We're living longer. We're bigger people now. So it's interesting, and just in our physically we've changed too.
Yeah. Well, it's true, because I also asked myself when I was writing this book, I said, what stays the same? What has always existed? What has always been the same? What have people always been like? And I try to sort of put that in the novel too, and sort of saying that, we're now taking for granted a whole new set of technology, but what's still the same? Heartache, pain, as you said, gluttony, vices, poor judgment, poor choices. This sort of thing always stays the same, and that's what I try to emphasize. I could play with humanity by taking humanity and putting it into a sort of different setting, or this is definitely our world, and people are definitely the same, but it's in the future, and what does that mean, and what stays the same? And human beings will always stay the same.
But on the other hand, some cultures are more enlightened in that we don't practice human sacrifices anymore. Because back in the day, there were human sacrifices and far more wars than what we have now, and far more cruel wars, like with hand-to-hand combat. What one person is willing to do to another. Now, of course,
absolutely.
You can just, like, push a button and kill a whole bunch of people and not even get your hands dirty, so to speak. So we have learned to distance ourselves. And, a bomb to me is just as cruel as hand-to-hand combat. But on a day-to-day basis, most of us don't get into that. Whereas, in the early man, I think there was day-to-day combat all the time.
Yeah, and it's quite strange because, in our daily lives, like on a micro level, there is much less personal violence and personal, you're much, in the medieval times, your life as an ordinary person would have been filled with a lot more violence and a lot more fighting and physical activity and physical violence. But now, there are... you have less violence in your day-to-day life, but we still have, huge weapons. And sort of on a macro level, there's been, there are more sort of huge weapons and violence, and when we do wage war, it's much more destructive, but we're much less likely to wage war. And, I think the Cold War was like a perfect example of this. Everybody was developing weapons all the time, the most powerful, intense weapons anyone had ever seen, bragging about it. These weapons, we're just going to brag about a weapon that can destroy all of humanity. It's bizarre when you think about it, but they weren't ever used. It never became a hot war. So I think that is quite an interesting, point, is that we're more able and more capable of waging a much more violent war, but we don't. It's sort of, it feels like, obviously developed nations are participate in wars a lot less now, but they still have, all the, the biggest weapons ever.
And the bragging part, I always wonder if most of the world leaders were women, I don't know that they would be talking to each other in the fashion of, oh, we've got the bombs, ours are much bigger than yours, and we'll just blow them all to where. Like some male I don't even want to use the word leaders, say that bragging is a male possibly thing. I wonder if women would be that if they were in control, like, I've got a bigger bomb than you do.
Well, that's kind of a true and interesting point because, for instance, Margaret Thatcher went to war in the Falklands, didn't really even hesitate. So, we say that, but I don't think we've got a big enough sample size of female leaders to actually assess if it's true whether women would wage war less. We have no idea. So I'd love to see a study on that. But I don't think that exists.
I think it's time for women to take over the world. That's what I have to say. The right ones. And I think there is a change. I mean, if you look at the world getting better, look for women, how we are progressing, and we're starting to become looked at as human beings, depending on the culture you're in and the place you're in. It's been a fight for us women, and I think now.
For voting rights and all sorts of rights.
Even for women in military. That's what I think is so interesting with your book too. Here in this country, in America, we're still battling with women being accepted as joining the army.
Yeah, and also it's kind of odd that women aren't, because a lot of the ways that we wage war now are much more distant. It's not a case of we need more men in the army because it's a matter of physical strength. Well, not if you're using a drone. That's got nothing to do with it. So it's quite odd, and we've become a bit more distant from war, and so the old arguments that were made, for war and for women in war, absolutely just don't exist anymore.
That's right. I like that. Well said. Yeah. Now tell us about the next two books. I mean, how long did it take you to put Clouds and Earth together, because this is it's intense, and so did it take you a while to write it, or did you write all three together?
Well, I didn't write all three together, although I kind of feel like I should have done, and then release them sort of within a couple of months. But basically, I started this actually on this journey in 2013, and it started as a screenplay, and I just felt that I couldn't tackle what I wanted to tackle in that format, and so it became a novel, and I translated it, the episode that I had written into prose, and it actually, I finished it in 2017. So it took me about 4 years. But when I say 4 years, that was not continuously. I was moving jobs, I was moving country, and so it probably took me. Most of it was filled in the last 4 or 5 months of 2017. So I'd say about 60% of the book was written then. But I just thought about the whole story. The whole story is mapped out, and so it will be sort of almost 260,000 words when it's done. But I've already started book 2, and it's going to be a wild ride. But it's tough, because if you're dealing with intense things, and some of the scenes, I was like, well, if I'm not crying, then the audience won't be crying either. So there we go.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's riveting, but it's personal, it's emotional, and now I understand why. Like I could feel like the poetic side of it. It's colorful. You can feel it's tangible, and that's what's freaky. When things are tangible, So would you like to see it on a screen, whether it's a TV screen or a movie screen or a Netflix screen?
Oh, I'd love to, but I don't make those decisions, and some of those decisions are like out of my control, if you know what I mean. So I feel like when they come to you, you don't go to them.
Yeah.
So I would love to, but we'll see.
Now, okay, so now if that happened, because I know that you also have an acting background, would you step in and be Sandy?
Absolutely not. So I used to be an actor, but I retired a while ago, and I I don't think I would do that. No, I don't think I'd be the right person. She's not like me, so so I don't know if you're surprised by that answer. No, I mean the funny thing is that I was an actor for almost 10 years, and I am now loath. It's very hard to get me on stage or in front of a camera now, just because whatever desire that I had to be an actor just went away, and I only get satisfaction from writing now. That's my creative satisfaction. So yeah.
Well, I think there's a big difference. When you're writing, you're in control. When you're acting, you're having to take instruction.
Oh, yeah, and when you're writing, it's your art. It's your own art. You are in 100% control. When you're an actor, you're effectively the servant of the person who wrote the script and the person who's directing the production. So you are the servant and not the master. And now that I'm the master, I don't think I can go back to being sort of the servant, if you know what I mean.
I love this. Yeah. I love this. It is about control, man.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Not even going to dispute that.
I love that, creative control. It's true.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Sandy, did you have someone that you know, or is she just a complete did you look at other women and take their qualities to build Sandy's character?
She is sort of. Yeah, she's sort of based on a whole, like a pastiche of other people I know, and sort of people's dark sides when you see them, and I've sort of borrowed from here and there. So the way I see her is sort of someone I would like, but someone other people may not necessarily like. And so she's sort of a friend of mine, but maybe someone who other people don't understand why I'm friends with her. That's sort of how I feel about her. And so I took, I'm a lot more neat and fastidious, and I don't think I don't handle stress well. She's someone who strikes me as very resilient up to a point. And, she's sort of someone who's buried her sensitivity, and I'm a very sensitive person and will never do that. And so she strikes me as someone with qualities I wish I had and qualities that I'm glad I don't have.
Yes.
But yeah.
But the thing, too, when you're writing, something and having that personality, and it's not you, there's that part where, like, do I really make her do this? Oh, I can. Let's just do it. You know what I mean? There's those decisions to make. And then how does that feel when you do that, make that decision? And it may not be the positive thing that you would do in your life. You're like, I would never do that. Do you have that emotion like, okay, I just went there, but not really, not me personally, but I did.
Yeah. And I did feel uncomfortable, and I felt uncomfortable with the things she did, but I thought, this is someone who doesn't have good judgment, whose mind is damaged a bit, and she makes terrible decisions, but that's the reality that she's living in. And if you live in a different reality, you make different decisions and choices, and they're decisions and choices I wouldn't make.
Now, I know, I don't know if you're doing this now or this was in the past, but I know that you've worked as a financial crime investigator. Does that help you? Right. Yeah. to be that, I mean, that's, you're looking at all those little fine details, and does that help you with researching and understanding what you've written? I mean, you have to look at the future and technology and war and peace and everything. So does that help you?
Yeah, it does, because that's my current profession, and just the other day, I had a decision, a conversation with one of my colleagues about, what are they doing in that country? What on earth? Why are they there? That sort of thing, and I actually, I sort of included a character who I knew was going to be sort of a financial crime investigator in the book before I got the job, because I wanted to move into this sector, and that was sort of like wish fulfillment for me. So one of the male characters in the book, that's his role, and I wrote him into the book before I got the job. So that was just a very weird coincidence. But it helped me shape his role a little bit. But also it helped me realize that people sort of don't have perfect information, and they can never have perfect information, especially when someone is trying to avoid giving you information, because it's a sign of criminal activity. So I think what comes across in the book is, they're trying to make the best decision they can on less than perfect information. It's like, well, look, it walks like a duck. It doesn't quack like a duck, but it definitely walks like a duck. So we're going to work on the assumption that it's a duck, and we're going to look for more information to see if it quacks like a duck too. And that's, the job that I eventually got really drove home the point that nothing is actually black and white. And people who we think, these are the type of people who should be able to get perfect information. Nope. They're just out in the world in the same sort of doing their best, just like everyone else.
It's interesting because Nancy and I've done some, the financial crimes, to me, it's fascinating. Well, because some of the, not you, Nancy, but some of the things we've gotten involved in over here is looking at, all these companies have shell companies, and then to dig in, there was this, I don't know if you saw what was happening here in regards to, the water issue here, and oil companies coming in and trying to take Native Americans' lands. And we were covering this and started digging into who was really behind it. And it was all banks and oil companies, and they were all connected in some way. And it really always, and it's just, once you start digging in, it's like, holy cow, that's all you're going to do for the rest of your life is figure this out, because it's layer upon layer upon layer of doo-doo.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and it's fascinating, and what you have to step back and be quite objective about it. But just because someone is linked to someone in one way doesn't mean that they know each other, or you don't know what the actual nature of that relationship is. They could be best friends and colluding with each other, or they could only have met each other once in passing at a board meeting or something like that, and not actually know. And so determining what are the actual nature of the relationships, that is often the hardest part. Quantity is not necessarily quality, and that's something that I deal with and I sift through all the time. And we're like, who owns that? And do they actually
exactly. Who really does? And sometimes it's interesting, because we were actually having a conversation with friends last night about this. A certain organization, we know they're not really living up to their mission statement, if you will, and it's a community organization. And I was talking to a friend about, they're not doing this and that. And the first thing he turned around and said is, this organization needs to have an audit. And I said, well, strange you would say that. They did, and they didn't put the person in the way that we thought should. And the actions are still happening. The same, it's kind of like smoke and mirrors, like someone's creating a noise over here so you don't see what's really going on over there. And it's quite interesting that just how people act. So when you're looking at things not being black and white, and you're looking at, okay, this is what's on paper, do you have to meet people to kind of figure it out, and emotionally? Because there's emotions too that give, body language and things that give things away.
Oh, absolutely. And also, a lot of people won't put their money where their mouth is, because something I learned recently, I was trying to set up a non-profit, and I'm still trying to set it up, but it's been a lot harder than I thought it was everybody agrees with me, everybody wants to help me, but everybody, is like, yes, we support you, but you go do that. I don't actually want to be involved. I completely agree with you, but actually, giving you my time and my money and, doing the right thing, you do that. Good for you, but you do it. It's like, actually, for instance, everybody knows when companies are, doing very sketchy things, but actually doing something about it, people are scared. And just people are sort of like, well, why should I put myself out? Why should I potentially, ruin my life or have the next 5 years worth of stress dealing with this company when I can just, go about my life? And I kind of, I get that. I really get that. But, some people have to do that job.
Well, I think it's powerful what you're doing between the, being the financial crime investigator, cool, and detailed work, and then writing. And I think that that's part of it, when you can come in through the creative role, and investigating is creative. It makes you think. And I think those two things together can and bring enlightenment to people, open their eyes to things. And sometimes the creative role is stronger. It's a stronger tool. Yeah.
And often people sometimes forget that, things can be, several things can be true at once. I read this somewhere. And, it can be this and this and this. And that makes it just more complicated. And those two things seem to contradict each other, but it's true. It's definitely, I think, how much creativity I have to use. Investigations is very interesting, and I think that would surprise a lot of people. But yeah, sometimes, through an artistic medium, you can get a message through better and more efficiently because it comes with a story. And people remember a story, more than they just remember cold, hard facts. Sometimes you have to wrap the facts up in a story for people to remember them.
That's really true.
Well, that's how you get it in, make it personal for them. If it's not personal, then you don't remember it so well.
It has to be all about them.
Yeah, well, it's like taking history class in high school didn't mean very much to most kids. Once they get out and they start seeing maybe historic films, or they go to museums, or they go to archaeological places, sites, and things like that, that the history starts to become personal to them. So then you remember it, and it has impact. But books on their own, especially textbooks, are like, bleh. Somebody should rewrite textbooks.
This is why they used to, storytelling used to be through plays, and it was both educational and storytelling at the same time, and before people were literate. But in many ways, that's sort of the way that people learn more through plays, and that's why drama was sort of invented. It was initially an educational tool, but because it was so powerful, that's where a lot of our storytelling comes from.
That's true. Yeah, good stuff. So, and clouds on earth. There you are. There's the balance, right? The opposites and the balance. I like that. And everyone, again, it is out now by Sayde Scarlett. You can go to her website, Sayde-Scarlett.com, and that's SAYDE, SaydeScarlett.com. Scarlett.com. Of course, you can get the book on Amazon and all those great online stores. It's always good to connect with the author directly. And we want to thank jkscommunications.com. They're our partners in literature, and they're part of what we do here on Big Blend Radio, and also a sponsor of our Love Your Parks tour, where Nancy and I are traveling full-time across the country to document parks and also tell community stories. And JKS Communications has partnered with us to go and find literary stories everywhere we go. And we're finding them. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, so thanks again for joining us, Sayde. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've had so much fun.
It's been a good conversation. You never know where these are going to go.
I know.
I love it. Well, listen, have fun, unraveling all those crimes. And if you have any good, juicy scoops, call us. We want to know.
I will do. But thank you so much.
You take care and keep us posted on book number 2. We're looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Thank you.